With the latest episode in Season 2, we get a look at the moment that divided the Itoshi brothers' relationship, and so I wanted to make a video dedicated to what exactly happened in Spain and why he didn't necessarily have a weak ego and give up on his dream, but instead forged a new one that relates to his actual true ego. As we know, Rin came into Blue Lock with the ambitions to crush Sae, and this stemmed from the confrontation when he returned from Spain, declaring he ditched his dream of becoming the world's best striker, as he declared his new dream to become the world's best midfielder instead. Now there are a few reasons why this moment between the two became so divisive, but to understand why it blew out of proportion, we have to look at Rin's backstory to get a better grasp about their relationship. Sae was always seen as this amazing older brother, and more importantly, kind to Rin. He's the perfect role model and older brother, which is why Rin was so fond of him. Heck, even now the relationship isn't even doomed, as Rin doesn't even think they are on bad terms, and Sae doesn't even realize they are fighting. They are just currently in a conflict that will eventually be resolved. As young as 8, Sae was already being regarded as a prodigy and the next big thing in Japan, and already had the ambitions to be the world's best striker. And around this time we also have Rin introduced to soccer as he instinctively runs on the field to score, which mesmerizes Sae, and with that he asks him to share his dream with him. At around the same age we see in Rin's recent backstory his destructive tendencies, and we see him watch the fight between Everman and the monster. And we see that Rin praises the monster and tells Sae how he himself wants to face someone amazing, destroy them, and finally die, which relates to Rin's true ego. And if you merge these moments together, you realize they kind of correlate in a way, as Sae mentions he will be the best striker in the world and Rin the second. Sae is setting himself as Everman and this awesome person for Rin, who is the monster, to destroy later in his life. And so Sae was going to be this person that Rin needed to fulfill his hunger, originality, and his true ego. As they grew older and continued to play together, we come to the day right before he leaves for Spain, and Sae asks him what he thinks when he plays soccer, which are goals, and further elaborating with it's the bad area where the enemy panics and falls through, a different mentality to his own. Rin may have a more intuitive playstyle, but with Sae's passes, he thought it was sufficient. Rin's self-styled ego is something that Sae probably knew of before even leaving to Spain. Even though Rin jokes about finding a replacement, we have Sae just tell him to not give up and follow him later, which is why Rin gets emotional as Sae himself gave up on their shared dream when he returned. His final words being, "I'm off to be the world's best striker," and with that Rin decides to grind and catch up in the meantime. With a long flight and time away from Japan, Sae can reevaluate his own thoughts, and maybe he already realized he doesn't have what it takes to be the world's best striker like Rin, whose mentality is completely different and focuses on goals. And so Sae may have come to the conclusion that he himself is a talented learner and not a genius like Rin, and doesn't aspire to be a striker as well. As the years go on, we have Rin struggle and end up changing his playstyle to mimic Sae's, and as a result his personal skill level regresses, but the team started to win more. In doing so, he sealed his own ego. He is doing the opposite of what ego said in the latest game, as he is a self-type genius egoist who is pretending to be a talented learner like Sae. And we go on to see that Rin also realizes how much of a burden Japanese soccer is, and how Sae was holding back, which may be a reason he went to Spain, where his talent and creativity can thrive and not wither away. A place he can truly be creative and create passes to people who are able to handle them, something that wasn't possible in Japan as there were no worthy strikers. As Rin was training, we have on the other side of the world Sae continually improve in the youth club, and even managed to score a hat-trick in the Real youth team match, right before reuniting with Rin, which is important because it highlights that he was not struggling, and he wasn't failing being a striker. But something else to consider is that Sae was also pretending to be someone he is not, where he was pretending to be a genius who comes to realize he is a talented learner, just like Isiki did in the latest match. He may have hit the same wall, and since there are actual geniuses and people better than him, he evolved by embracing that he is in fact a talented learner. I'll also go into more depth about this later, but carrying on with the backstories. As Sae comes back, we have the Itoshi brothers reunite, but both have changed drastically. We further see Sae's exhausted face, a new expression Rin hasn't seen before, and this exact moment is hyped up by the author in the recent Egoist Bible, where in the interview he says his expression when he returned from Spain was due to something extraordinary, and so we know this exact moment will be expanded on and be important later in the story. So now the focus on the video is to determine what exactly is this extraordinary moment that Sae experienced to make this face and cause him to alter his dream. Sae was gone for 4 years, and in that time he grinded and got to be a bench player for Real's youth team, and even ended up scoring a hat-trick in one of his latest games before returning. So judging by his journey, it looked like he was still playing and doing well as a striker, and only announced his new dream as he returned, which is why Rin was caught off guard as he followed his journey closely and was surprised about the revelation. The biggest current theory is because of the Prince of Real, Luna. Referred to as one of the best strikers in the world and being from the same team, it makes sense that Luna took part in why Sae gave up his dream as a striker, whether it be from his overwhelming talent or something else completely. This theory gains credibility when you consider that when Sae came back, he even says there are people better than him, so it alludes to someone from Spain being insanely talented that even Sae acknowledges. As we look at Luna's dialogue, we know he mocks the Japanese ambitions of winning the World Cup, but at least compliments Sae's skill. Now the most important interaction is actually with Rin, as he criticizes his lack of experience and goes on to tell how he loves to crush and discourage people with his whole heart. This glimpse into his personality makes it very believable that Luna was the one who successfully broke Sae and discouraged his dream of becoming the world's best striker in hope of winning the World Cup. But I actually don't think that's the reason, and that's because Sae plays for the youth team. He didn't play on the same squad as Luna, which makes me believe it was someone else from Real who led to Sae's change. And so I'm actually predicting that this person will be the younger brother of Luna. That way we have Rin and Sae have a brother duo to beat in the future. And I think that the proposed brother didn't actually dissuade Sae into quitting being a striker, but instead persuaded him into following his own dream, which was to be the world's best midfielder. And don't forget, as the story progresses, the Blue Lockers come to realize their true egos. If Sae's true aspirations and dream was to be the world's best striker, then the story would have to have an arc about him converting back to being a striker. And I think it's extremely more likely they will embrace Sae's midfielder ego, as it just doesn't make much sense in the story for him to revert back. Sae acknowledges there are people out there much better than himself as a striker, whether it be a genius's overwhelming skill or another quality preventing him from reaching that same level. And so this person from Spain has a specific quality that indicates they are better than him as a striker, and a lot of other pros likely have it too. But there's someone else we also know who has a specific quality similar to that, and that is Isuki. Sae doesn't believe he can be the one to change Japan forever, and although he believes Rin can be the best striker in the world, and even considered Shido as well, he directly tells him that the true egoist that can change Japan forever is in fact the Isuki. So we know that Isuki has this aura and hidden quality like the other top players Sae knows, and I think I know what it is. Isuki, even under pressure and fighting against strong opponents like Kaiser, did not back down, and has the ego to want to overtake him and reach his goal of being the #1 striker. Even when he was given amazing offers as a midfielder, he turned it down as he intended to be a striker, which also raises a question if Sae was offered a starting position as a midfielder and transitioned unlike Isuki, although I don't think that's very likely. I truly believe the thing that separates Isuki from the Itoshi brothers is his ability to adapt and draw out the best of his teammates and force them to continuously awaken and improve. Another thing I want to talk about in the manga and explore is the idea of the different ego types, where it's classified into the world and self type, and further expanded into the notion of talented learners and geniuses respectively. And as we know, geniuses are those who have great natural abilities, whereas a talented learner, or prodigy in some translations, as someone who continually adapts to geniuses. We go on to see there is a great wall for these talented learners to form a new evolution. But geniuses need to be discovered, and the ones to do it are talented learners, which is why Isuki is the trigger for Rin's awakening in the current game, and I think Sae acknowledged in the U20 game where Isuki was the one to draw out Rin's ego. We also know that Sae was the one to help awaken Shido in that game too, and so both talented learners, Isuki and Sae, act as catalysts that awaken teammates. And since it's a cyclic evolution where the different ego types awaken each other, then Isuki is key in helping Japan improve. Isuki having a striker mentality of being number one, while also being a world type egoist who can trigger the awakening of other genius teammates like Rin, Baro and Nagi, is the key attribute and why he specifically can be the one to change Japan. The only other two people who share the same mentality and ego type are Snuffy and Kaiser, both who have attributes to be the world's best too. Isuki can become what Sae was meant to be, a striker who can change Japan forever and a person to awaken Rin's ego and is willing to die fighting against. That's why when Rin asks for an undefeatable phantom stronger than Sae, we have Isuki later emerge from that spirit and allow for Rin to go past his limits, forcing a new impulse and becoming the exact person Rin wanted to face. A foe strong enough who puts their life on the line, and once again, the story highlights that Isuki is the one to force Rin's awakening and his development. And it's not like a genius can't be summoned with this attribute of awakening teammates, as we know Rin helped Charles awaken. But since we know that Japan lacked capable strikers prior, then they specifically need an initial talented learner to spark for the fellow geniuses, which is why Isuki is praised by Sae as he can do it. Another theory I've seen is that he looked depressed due to an overwhelming amount of racism during his time in Real. This theory comes from the fact his wristbands once he returned were dedicated towards anti-racism. Being isolated and in a foreign country with no friends or family, it could definitely be the case where he just felt broken. With Ego mentioning how some prodigies struggle in new environments, this could be a little nudge to Sae. So maybe his teammates refused to pass him and made the game much harder for him, requiring him to change his role, similar to how they wanted Isuki to pass the Kaiser in the NEL. But although racism could be part of it, Sae still scored a hat-trick right before reuniting with Rin, and he even ended up becoming a new gen member. So I'm less inclined to believe he changed his dream due to it, simply because from what we know, Sae didn't drop in performance. There's also a more popular theory currently, which is gaining more traction, and that goes further into the concept of the wall a talented player has to overcome, where Sae goes on to realize he can't climb over it like Isuki, and so he changed his dream to become something more feasible as he realized he can't compete with actual geniuses, and settled his dream of just becoming a midfielder like Hiyori did. But like I said before, I really dislike this option because Sae is an egoist too, fulfilling a lukewarm dream because he's not good enough to become the world's best striker goes against the idea of him being an egoist. And so the alternative look that I truly believe is what happened is that he found a way to overcome this wall and evolve himself. Sae is a creative, talented learner, and so just like how Isuki and Kaiser realized in the NEL that the way to evolve is to throw away their fixations and focus on the game, we have Sae likely making the same connection. And so we will have Sae throw away his fixation with Rin in his dream, and also the expectations forced upon him from Japan, which by the way is the thing he hates most. Ignoring all of this and focusing on the actual game leads to its evolution, which also makes sense when he returned and basically told Rin that he doesn't actually need him. And so my interpretation is that instead of being dissuaded and giving up on his dream, I strongly believe it wasn't a negative experience causing this extraordinary moment, hyped up by the author. Instead, it was someone else from Real that helped show Sae to follow his own ego, which is to be the world's best midfielder, where he can unleash his creativity, and realize that he is a talented learner. He may still struggle and go through some hardships, but it all stems from the fact that he learned who he truly is during his time in Real, and that he wants to be a midfielder. We also know that when Sae and Rin have a deep talk right before leaving, we know that Rin describes that he is goal hungry, and similarly we know that Isuki is too. But besides Sae saying he wants to be the world's best striker, we don't actually get much insight into his true feelings. We never see him smile when he scores or joy as a striker. He may have realized that he doesn't have the same mentality as those two and truly doesn't want to either. Like the most we've seen Sae expressed is when he passed to Rin and he scored, and he was mesmerized by that moment. Even his favorite thing in his ego's Bible is described as plays that exceed his imagination. He wishes to show the world his creative plays and passes. That's who he truly is. And you may ask, why did Sae declare being the best striker if he himself didn't believe it? Well, if he's a world-type egoist, then he desires the bigger picture. And if Rin's words are to be taken literally, then we know he hates losing and wants to win, which is kinda similar to Isugi. So what if he believed that him being the best striker in Japan is what ensures their victory, even if he would rather play as a midfielder? And since there's no one else capable in Japan to be that striker, he burdens himself by playing that role he isn't best suited in. And then we also know there's no striker in Japan who can handle his passes. He feels this pressure of his creativity being trapped by Japanese soccer. So when he plays overseas, there are actual talented strikers, and more specifically, geniuses out there that are just straight up better than him. He used to be able to overcome these geniuses in Japan as he was a big fish in a small pond, but as Io described, he can't play that way to evolve. And so he has to now overcome this wall similar to Izuki and Kaiser, as he realizes he must go back to his roots and follow his own ego. And to do that, he must throw away his expectations of being a striker and carrying Japan, and the expectations he put on himself to satisfy Rin's dream. And so he is an egoist that's following his own dream now. And so I strongly believe he didn't give up his dream by getting mentally crushed, but evolved by following his true ego. So when he returns, we have Sae give his ultimate betrayal as he throws away the shared dream that he dragged him into, as he decides to just follow his own path now. But Rin also changed to be a copycat, throwing his ego away for Sae, which annoys him because it's as he says, that playstyle isn't good enough to be the world's best striker and is changing who he is. And so when we have Sae tell Rin about his new dream, of course it doesn't go well, because Rin's goal was deeply tied to Sae's original dream, the one he changed. Even going on to say that Sae, who tried his whole life mind you, to be the best brother, isn't his brother anymore, and his exhausted look breaks and you see his pain. In Sae's mind, it wasn't his intention to betray Rin, but to show that he wants to follow his own dream and ego. But Rin just doesn't see it that way. He goes on to say he doesn't have a reason to play without him, which disappoints him and sees it as betrayal. And so we see Rin sees it as a betrayal as Sae changed to follow his own dream, while Sae sees it as a betrayal because Rin changed to be not who he is. And it's not like Sae even gave up on his dream, as he still wanted to be Rin's midfielder and help him become the world's best striker, even going on to say he has exceptional talent. He was mesmerized by Rin's goal as a child, but as long as he mimics his playstyle and uses him as a reason to play instead of following his own ego of being a destroyer, then he doesn't have what it takes to be the world's best. With harsh words, there is no malice as Sae does truly care for Rin, but something needs to be said in order for Rin to evolve and progress. But this doesn't exactly tell why Sae had this exhausted expression that was hyped up by the author. His flight came early and he went directly to Rin, so he could be tired, but that's definitely not the reason, as there's gotta be a huge narrative reason that we'll learn in the future. And for now, I believe it just relates to the other player from Real, and the fact Sae came early to tell Rin the hurtful news that he is a failure of a brother and can't be the person Rin wants to destroy and satisfy his hunger. And so Sae's facial expression to me just tells him that he knows that he's gonna hurt Rin in the progress, but didn't expect Rin to basically disown him as a brother as he just wants to follow his own dream. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching, Buddha be praised, and have a good day.